So I guess I'm all
All
by
right, you're
myself.
live.
I'm live. Salutations and a very good Monday evening to everybody. Generational change, not letting you down. It's 8:08 past the hour, and Jen Perlman is getting her Lulu special.
It's a Sophie. I'm having a Sophie situation.
Oh, it's Sophie's
I'm home
situation.
alone. There's no other humans. And Sophie is the world's biggest pain in the butt. So she'll scratch at the door. And until someone else comes home, I'm just going to leave the door open. So wish us luck.
Yeah, but dogs always make everything better, even if they're not necessarily making everything better. So
Yeah, well, okay. So I sort of have this theory in life that everything is crap and glitter. I'm going to try to stay monetized. So everything is crap and glitter. And the goal is to leave the world with more glitter than crap. And I evaluate relationships. It's really the same concept as a cost benefit analysis, but in terms of what somebody brings into your life. And absolutely, the dogs, I would say, are like a good 99% glitter, which their glitter crap ratio is way better than that of humans. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
Well, I've been very fortunate to have spent the past 5 days with my family dogs here in New Jersey, and they certainly make life better, especially my dog Ginger, who is 10 now. But she's the smartest dog I've ever seen. She knows how to open doors. Well, they say dogs talk. Well, what she does is she makes certain grunting sounds, but it's clear that what she's doing is communicating. So I'm not exactly sure what she's conveying, but I kind of have an idea of where she's going when she's talking. So
my dog talks to me. I don't find that strange. Lulu talks. So listen, let's just, let's just move on. So guys, as of right now, we are not, our expected guest is not coming on right now. We had miscommunication. Peter was supposed to be flying home tonight. There was a travel situation. And so right now we are without guest. However, we have really good graphics this evening. And so we have we have good stuff to talk about. So I think that we will just have to entertain everybody with our witty banter.
Well, we're usually pretty good at doing that, I think. So
yeah. I mean, I think we're just going to have to do that. But so if you want, I could start. What would you like to start with?
Well, you said you really wanted to, not hesitate as far as addressing the whole Alcee Hastings situation. And it's not about Alcee. It's actually about the way the Alcee situation has been handled by the Broward establishment, I guess is the way you could put it.
Yeah. So this is something for people who are not from South Florida. Congressman Hastings has been a fixture in Florida politics for, I think, 50 years, 60, 70 years, forever. And so he is definitely basically like congressional royalty down here. And he died recently. He was 84, I believe. I can't do the math. Yes. Mm-hmm. And was sick for a couple of years. And so he died. And so now all of the creatures are going to come out of the woodwork to run for a seat that none of them had the balls to challenge him in the first place, because when these people sit there, they sit there. Alcee might have been great as a representative in his earlier days and really fought the good fight. He did support Medicare for all. That's all good. But he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and then kept deciding to run. And I feel like that's holding on to power just a little too long instead of passing the torch. And in the meantime, it has already started where the shenanigans are who's going to fill that seat. And so, of course, I put SoFlo's hack newspaper already promoting their establishment favorites. And by the way, noticeably absent from their establishment favorites is the one person who had the balls to run against him when he was an incumbent.
Who's not an establishment person.
Right, correct. Sheila Sherfillis McCormick ran against him in the primary in 18 and in 20. She did really well in 20, and she has been working for that seat. And meanwhile, not one of these happy-faced people had the balls to do anything, because there is this sort of culture in certain districts, like the person sitting there gets to decide who they want to bequeath their seat to. And sure as form, as of today, it looks like Alcee's family is supporting Dale Holness to come in and have that seat bequeathed to him. So this is how this works, which will now open a chain of events for Dale Holness's seat on the commission. And he'll bequeath that to whoever the next in line person is. And none of these people challenge power. All they do is just toe the line and wait their turn. And it disgusts me to no end. And so hence my who will be anointed graphic.
Yeah, unfortunately, the power structures in Broward have been in place for decades and decades. And, Dale has been a city commissioner. He's been the mayor. He's also got a very big real estate sort of empire, if you will. So when that happens, you're talking about shoring up as much support as you possibly can. So if in the event an opportunity is presented to you, it makes it a lot easier to simply, it's almost like you're on the ladder and you only have to go up one rung. Whereas anybody who is attempting to, to ascend or to possibly, rise above you, they're going 4, 5, 6 blocks below that have to climb up that ladder.
Yeah. So, and there is definitely this attitude of people need to wait their turn and it's not your turn yet. And it's really like a monarchy. And there's several districts here that kind of run like that. And it's really, it's quite disgusting actually, because we shouldn't be in a monarchy. But our friend Christine Olivo, who ran against Frederica Wilson in 20 in the general, had gone up and introduced herself to her very friendly at an event. And Frederica was less than gracious and basically told her that where does she get off not waiting her turn?
Right.
And that's not who's going to fill her seat. So there is definitely an attitude of we get to pick our successor.
Yeah. And again, this is, like I said, this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are turned off to politics. It's one of the reasons why they don't want anything to do with it. And they see it as, well, everything in politics is all about an establishment infrastructure that is built over time. And, they crush their enemies. I mean, look, there's nobody who basically challenges these guys. And John is right. The same thing will likely happen with Kamala if she, is either the VP or, dare I say, even the president leading into the 2024 election. And so because we don't have term limits, we are in the type of situation where if you are going to challenge power, then everyone is going to come after you with everything they have. Unfortunately, when you ran for Congress, there was what you would call a fraudulent slate card that was put out on behalf of numerous candidates. They were being put in people's mailboxes, which again is illegal. And
please, we've since found out how they ballot harvest.
Sure. And so,
like the jig is up, people. We know exactly how it's done. Just nobody really cares to do anything about it.
Unfortunately, if the Holness presents another obstacle, if you were to run again, should he get to Congress, because then he'll really be arm in arm with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And this is what people do. It's not about.
He was already an impediment, so
sure.
Only just based on the finances alone, it wouldn't matter either way. And that's all about the money.
Correct. It is. That's a fiduciary relationship. That's
absolutely
what it's always been. And that's kind of how most politics is, to be honest. I mean, when Wasserman Schultz was running to be the chair of the Appropriations Committee, unbelievable to even think that was possible.
Hilarious.
One of if you were to listen to any of I think she got like 75 congressional representatives to vote for her. Now, of course, she lost in a landslide, but that's not really the point. The point is the people who ultimately ended up running, or the people who ended up supporting her, I should say.
Oh, God.
The thing that they would always say, what would they always say? Debbie's great at fundraising. Debbie's great at putting money in the coffer. She really helped my race. This is legal bribery is basically what this is. Because it's not a question of, are you really doing anything to help the community? So as it relates to Congressional District 20 here in Florida, and who would be the right person to fill that seat, it should be a race about ideas. It should be a race about who would be the best person to represent Congressional District 20. What it is ultimately going to be, unfortunately, especially if Mr. Holness decides that he is going to run for the seat, which we both agreed that he would, they're just going to try to clear the field. They don't really want a primary. They don't want any type of challenge, and they certainly do not want any type of mudslinging or actual campaigning going on.
No, they don't really. They just want to keep the succession. It's just a chain of succession, none of which services the actual people, but so be it. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a here nor there as to who I think it should be, more as just how it disgusts me how the system works to sort of like bequeath that seat. And I knew that's exactly how it would be. I'm not remotely surprised, and yet there it is. So do you want to do news? Do you want to do news?
Florida news.
Well, hold on a second. I got to get it.
And there's always plenty to talk about. You would think that there would ever be a calm week in the state of Florida, but there never will be. There's always going to be something that, we have to address. And, a story that we touched on, I think the past 2 Monday shows in relates to what had happened in Senate District. I think it was 30, is it 33? 30, no,
in Miami.
35.
Talking in Miami, yes.
Yeah, it's like 35 or 36. And so JJR, Jose Javier Rodriguez, unfortunately was, I guess, what you would call a victim of election fraud. And so the gentleman, Frank Artillis, who basically organized this thing to put another Rodriguez on the ballot to confuse voters, kind of like the 2000 ballots where Pat Buchanan's name was put in a place where normally the Democratic candidate would be, to kind of throw people off. If you've ever seen the ballot, you'd be like, yeah, that makes no sense. But of course, these are the types of tricks that the GOP employs. And even though people like you and I would be savvy enough to know the difference between the two Rodriguezes, there's still a number of people, or shall I say a lot of voters, quite frankly, that don't really know who their candidates are. Now, they vote, and we want everyone to vote. But unfortunately, we have a small percentage of the population that votes to begin with. And on top of that, you also have a significant percentage of them who are not well informed. So when you add all that up, things like this can ultimately happen. But
basically, he put up a fraudulent candidate, implying that it was someone who it wasn't, like that Eddie Murphy movie.
That is correct.
It's like the Eddie Murphy. What was that? Oh my God, I forget what it was called.
Oh, you're thinking of Bowfinger when it's?
I don't think it was both. No, it was. He was pretended to be. He used his name was Jefferson, and he used the name without a picture of himself, and pretended to be someone who he knew had died. And he won because people voted for the name.
Very interesting. I don't remember that movie. I just remember that there was like a bait and switch in this movie that was done. And again, this is the type of thing that people do. Now, is it? It depends on the technical. I mean, again, you're the lawyer here, so I don't know the legality within which the frame of what he did, what he didn't do, what is considered acceptable, what isn't. I'm not really sure. All I do know is that if there are documents showing that this guy specifically put somebody in this race through, I guess what you would call some form of a bribe to get them to run, to have their name on the ballot just to screw things up, yeah, that's pretty bad. And it's probably not that big of a deal in comparison to the other types of things, the other types of nefarious tactics that go on. I'm reading a book right now that in one part of the book, they talk about ballot dumping, and it's done in such a nonchalant way. Yeah, one side was just waiting for the other side to release certain ballots, and then the other side would say they have a certain amount. It's like, you're admitting that you're cheating. And this is why people don't want to be involved, because they don't trust the process. And cases like this make you think, well, how can we trust the process?
The Distinguished Gentleman. That's the name of the movie.
Don't know it, but I know it now.
Yes. It wasn't really that great of a movie, but that was the premise. Okay, so basically election fraud in Florida. So that's typical. And Broward has the highest percent of British variant COVID cases.
Yeah, and
we're number one. Broward's number one.
Well, we're horrifically congested. And
we don't, and our governor doesn't think that there's a problem.
No, and then it really comes down to whether or not, we face the reality that we are overpopulated and that with too many people living in too close quarters, sharing too much, reduced space, and we don't have a lot of green space in Broward County. So people really are like sardines in a lot of ways, and passing the virus around becomes a lot easier to do in these densely populated areas. I have no doubt that whether it is South Florida, whether it's Southern, even Northern California, whether it's New York City, Chicago, any of those places, any place that is highly densely populated is going to have to deal with the ramifications of a virus that we did not tackle properly from the beginning. And as we discussed last time, and we can discuss every time, we still do not have a universal healthcare system, which would have infinitely helped the process, would have saved countless lives, hundreds of thousands apparently. And so with this British variant that's coming in, which apparently is more lethal, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
If anything's going to super spread, it's going to be down here. I would say Hollywood Beach, based on just my personal experiences being there in the past month.
You and I went to the beach, and we saw basically everybody not wearing masks.
It doesn't, and I was just there again with our beach cleanup last week, and it's like there's
same thing, right? Same thing.
Yeah, there's no
there's no changing the fact that unfortunately Florida has a lot of problems, and they're not going to get better anytime soon for, like I said, a multitude of reasons. The transient nature within which our part of the state happens to be. We have very disinterested citizens in the sense that, there is an activist crowd, but a lot of it's split. A lot of it's very fickle in terms of how they want to engage or recognize.
And a lot of it's based on nonsense like renaming streets and that kind of thing.
And I'm not discounting that there are things that need to be done, but like I said, unless we deal with primary problems, the things that actually affect our day-to-day lives, and again, I understand how certain people feel about certain things, but you know what? It is a privilege to focus your energies on something that basically bothers you and isn't what's affecting the collective. What is affecting the collective is our health. And that is something that is happening day in and day out. It is a serious problem. And that's why, if you get the vaccine, that's great. And, I will get it, but I am in no rush for this reason. We need to see just how effective it is. And with this British variant, we need to know if, in fact, it's going to be effective against that. Because if the British variant starts to spread and the vaccine that has been given does nothing to help it, then we're really looking at another extended pandemic.
Yeah.
And all the while, we could have solved this. You couldn't have solved it completely. But if from the very beginning we had monthly stimulus checks and universal health care, think about how much of a different scenario we'd be sitting in today.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on from COVID.
So the crisis only gets worse.
We're going to move on from COVID because, I probably shouldn't even, this could be the last time I put up a COVID story. I'm kind of getting sick.
But this was important because you needed to address the fact that it's
all of it is important until I'm just kind of sick of talking about it.
No, because you plug one hole and then another hole opens up.
I know.
So that's the problem.
But we're going to become, I just don't want to become like, sort of like the Rachel Maddow of COVID with Russia, like that. Like we need to not be on that.
Speaking of plugging holes, this just seems to be one thing after the other. So we now have, as you guys are probably aware, a very serious toxic water situation up in the Tampa Bay area. And this is only getting worse by the day. I don't know what the thousands of people I think have been evacuated out of their neighborhoods at this point.
Yeah, it's something like 300 homes. But I don't know how that's like, what is there, but there's no plan, right? There's no plan on how to do anything with this. Interestingly enough, a gentleman who came to our beach cleanup is actually an engineer that deals with environmental and hydraulic stuff and all of these things. And he was saying, he's like, yeah, they don't have a plan to do anything for it. They're not going to fix it. They just figure if they evacuate people and they just flush it out, they'll just facilitate it so the thing doesn't break, but they're still evacuating the toxic sludge into the water.
I just don't know.
There's the gunk is still going into the water. The only difference is it won't break the barrier. It won't break the infrastructure doing it if they seep it out. So instead of fixing the system, we're just going to let it have a leak out. They're not fixing it at all. They're not doing anything.
Much like the red tide and the blue-green algae, they're just looking for Band-Aids. They're not looking for systemic issues. And again, this gets back to the fact that why do we have toxic water problems?
Well, Florida is apparently the #1 phosphate plant in the country and one of the largest exporters of phosphates, in the world. And I didn't even realize this. And so this is the runoff of that creation of the phosphate. So it's not good. And apparently there are many of these, there are piles that go up to the top. And then you could see that's the top of one right there where there's like a lake at the top and it's all just toxic sludge. And there's tons of these piles that it's real. I never knew this existed.
I think
it's really gross.
Well, I think it speaks to an even greater problem. Jordan Chariton of Status Quo, friend of the show, he's done an amazing job, obviously covering the Flint water crisis. But as he and you have stated many a times, there are Flints all over the United States, just like there are toxic water problems all over the state of Florida. This just happens to be one that is literally coming to the surface and it's going to break and it's going to be very bad.
Yeah.
And so at what point do we overhaul our energy grid and recognize that we cannot afford to have things like this? Because if we do, they're not going away. But
it doesn't, in the meantime, where are these people supposed to go? And for how long are they supposed to go there? Well, and then even when they come back, their water is still going to be poisoned. So I don't understand what is the point of evacuating people if you don't have a solution for them to go back?
Well, that's a fair point. But again,
I mean,
it's also the fact that this is a very overpopulated state. There is limited land that you could even live on to begin with. A lot of land is protected, especially in South Florida. And so at some point, you have to say, why is Governor DeSantis doing what he's doing? I sometimes question if the reason he does what he does is because he's trying to deter people from moving to the state.
Anything that they do is for profit and money. So whatever it is, all roads lead there. But the last thing then, this is actually, I think, the most important thing is the GOP passed the anti-protest bill. And this is a really big problem. And this is going on in multiple states right now, by the way. This is going on all over the place. It's not just here. But it's House Bill 1. And this is essentially a violation of our First Amendment. This is a bill that it allows people to run over protesters. It basically is taking away our right of assembly, our right of free speech. It's very problematic. And I have to tell you, I'm concerned that this actually has a chance of getting through. And I do find it completely unconstitutional, and I do believe it would be found to be unconstitutional, but I'd still rather not have it go through.
Well, what you have to remember about the protest bill, and I think this is very important, is that the reason why these things become so hyperbolic is there is always going to be good and bad in anything. And there are elements of the bill that are good, obviously. But then there are what you call poison pills that get stuck in these bills purposefully to hammer away at the working class.
That's what they do. Well, that's the point. What they do is they want to use that. But, this is really a free speech issue. Yet again, another fascist takeover of our right to speak.
Yeah. And so, of course, the fascist takeover of our speech has much more to do with, and this is a very good point because of what happened, as you know, with Lieutenant Nazario the other day, who was obviously, you want to talk about abuse of power.
Oh, that whole thing? Oh, we haven't even talked about that. The lieutenant.
No, but what I think is very important to note, and someone brought this up the other day, and I think it's true. The more that society starts to question the way things are, and the more they recognize that the system is not just flawed, but perhaps even beyond saving at this point, we are living in a police state. And the reason why the cops do what they do in certain instances is because they want citizens to be afraid of them. They do not want there to be any type of citizen uprising. And so by not having a citizens uprising, they kind of give them these little warnings here and there to say, hey, if you even try to protest in the street for universal health care, police reform, the environment, well, we could line up 100,000 of these cops at any moment with tanks, with armory, and basically put you in your place. And I think that is part of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, it's all just part of suppression and keeping people down and keeping people fighting, and just it's all part of it, and it's just really authoritarian and it's really scary, and it's just something that we need to really be concerned with here, right?
But hey, while you're at it,
I would be calling up your state senators as this is going to move forward through the legislature and be saying we do not want this.
Correct. But hey, you still got time to dunk on Jen on social media, because that's much more important than trying to form the proper coalitions to make sure.
But may I just say that I've been 2 weeks without social media.
That's nice.
And it's been really nice. And so I just want to put that out there to people. Like, you can say whatever you want about me, but especially now, I'm not even seeing it.
Yeah. Well, that's something about any of our posts.
So you're yelling into the ether.
I try to explain to people, I'm like, you got to understand, when our posts go up on social media, we're not looking at what people are saying. So you can dunk on Jen 1,000 times over, as many times as you like, but you really are not going to get what you're looking for.
No. And what's funny is the best way for me to deal with it is just literally I just turned it off.
Yeah.
And I officially do not do social media personally anymore. And it's been wonderful. And I actually, any time that I would have spent doing that, I've been reading, which is great for me. And I just don't need the nonsense in my headspace. And I would love to talk about the Chauvin trial. John brings that up because I have been, and I even was sitting here watching it just now. I have watched every minute of this trial, from pretrial motions all the way up through. I'm not complete with today.
There are people that are actually concerned that there is a potential pathway for Chauvin to get off.
It's not, I got to tell you, it's not looking good from my perspective. And I actually come at this with a defense attorney mindset. Like, right. I am much more of a defense attorney mindset than a prosecutor's mindset. So even though I want this animal to go to prison for the rest of his life, I still do, from watching it, look at the strategy of the defense and what he's doing and how he's, calling, who he's going to call and what his theories are. So he doesn't have much. And really what they're doing is they're going on the causation issue. They can't dispute facts. And that's actually something that makes this kind of simple in some ways. There's no factual dispute. And that's kind of cool. But they're going at this on a causation issue, saying that it wasn't because of Chauvin's knee on his neck, that's not why he died.
Well, that's all they got. That's all they can go on. They can't.
And it's not looking good. I'm watching the expert. So far, the expert that I've watched today is it's annihilating. I mean, my concern isn't that he's not going to get convicted. I do believe he's going to get convicted. The question is, can they get him on second degree, which I think they can. I do. And so, but really, in my mind, if he gets anything less than 20 years, that city's going to be set on fire. I'm sorry. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I feel like it isn't about whether he gets convicted. It's about how long the sentence is. Well, I personally think he should be in prison forever.
Well, how old is Chauvin? Is he like 40? Is that what he is?
I don't know. Yeah, he's younger than me, I believe.
Yeah, he's not young. He's not old. He's basically, I don't know do you remember how long he's been on the force for?
Long enough. But I honestly, to me, and I know that it is a matter of that they can't prove all these elements beyond a reasonable doubt. But to me, this was much more akin to a first-degree murder than a second-degree murder.
Oh, yeah.
It was very purposeful. It was very thought out. I do recall there was evidence that they knew each other prior to this. Look, all I'm saying is that I just, anything less than 20 years in that city.
So what you're saying is that he was either summoned before by Chauvin, or there was a, so you're saying they actually did know each other?
I thought, my understanding was when this all first went down, within the first few weeks, it came out that Floyd, they knew each other from some nightclub or some bar where Chauvin did off-duty cop work. Because sometimes they take, jobs, which is normal on the side, and that they knew each other and they weren't strangers. And I still haven't heard confirmation of that either way, but that to me changes the entire story in a different way. And it's just, to me, second-degree murder is not enough here for me. And yet that's the best we're going to get. The most he's looking at really, I think, is 40 years. You can get it's like 25 to 40 or something. I forget what it is for second-degree murder.
The reality is, but like I said, the reality is if he were to even get 40 years, or if that was even the sentence and he was actually going to... He's not
making it 10. No. He's not making it 10 years in prison. That's not the point. If they give him 20 years, he's not going to make it that amount of time. Bad cops in prison is not something that anybody wants to actually, have happen to them. It's really bad. The only thing, actually, I think bad cops are lower on the pecking order than pedophiles. So you don't want to be,
I don't know if I'm going there, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm telling you, he's not going to make it 20 years. There's no way. So, but I just think as far as people not losing it and burning down the city, they're going to need to, it's going to need to be significant.
Forgive me for having to change my lighting. My computer battery was going a little low. So, there we go. That's much better.
Oh, here it is. They worked at a nightclub together. See? That's what I had thought.
I mean, that's real damning evidence as far as...
Well, except that's not even being brought up. Nobody's even really talking about that. And the reality is that it doesn't really mean anything. And Chauvin's never going to take the stand. So they're never going to be able to question. So no one will ever know. His mindset is going to be extremely hard for them to talk about. They're not going to be able to really address it. And they're not going to want to open that up. And he's definitely not going to take the stand.
No, but I do think very interesting. Farming ganja. Did you see the next message that he put up?
This? Oh, wait.
No. I mean, that's very interesting.
It's not surprising. And honestly, I'm telling you, anything less than 20 years, and I just think that city is, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the people there.
Well, now, I mean, the tensions have got to be off the charts now, because now you've got the second murder that just took place with DeJuan Wright and the Minneapolis police, and him getting, I mean, look, it's bad. And as you have alluded to, and as I agree with 100%, you have to end qualified immunity. If you do not end qualified immunity, then these types of cases will continue. If you hit them in their wallet, it will stop. It just will.
It's unfortunate that that's how you have to do it. But then at least once you do that, it could stop the situation. And then we can address the other things like demilitarizing them. I don't think we need patrol like we have patrol. I want the crime solving aspect. I don't need people patrolling neighborhoods looking to find people to arrest. There's a lot of issues. We need to get rid of the profit motive. There are so many things that need to be dealt with. But yeah, a very good first step is ending qualified immunity. New York just did that, and that is definitely a step in the right direction.
I think there's a possibility of us having a surprise special guest, so keep you posted.
Okay, well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So you know what also is fascinating to me? The fact that Derek Chauvin knew that not only was he being recorded by the people, and he was wearing his body cam, like all their body cams were on, like he did that knowing that he was being recorded. Can you imagine what this man has done when he wasn't being recorded? Because I think that is, and granted, this is by no means a legal argument. It's not anything that I would present as evidence, but for every rat you see, there's 50 you don't. There is no way that somebody who acts like that in front of a camera is not acting worse not in front of a camera. So
well, that's
people
the
need
whole
to think
story.
of that.
And you know what? I think that's a great segue into it's a special story, but it's one that we have to talk about. Obviously, what happened to Lieutenant Karan Nazario in Windsor, Virginia, just outside of Norfolk.
Oh, yeah.
This is a
Did you see it? Did you see it? I saw
it.
Of
course. And I got to tell you something. When Gutierrez hit him with the pepper spray the second time,
oh my God.
He still, and again, it just goes to show you that he's a trained soldier in combat. He's somebody who absolutely saw combat because of the fact that he was able, through that kind of pain, if you've ever been pepper sprayed, if anybody knows what that pain is like,
it's
fact
horrible.
that he was still able to maintain equilibrium in that instant without like rushing out of the car. And it would have given them, they would have just said, oh, I thought he was coming at me. Bang, bang, bang. And that would have been it. But for whatever
and you know
reason,
what's interesting is the reason that they were basically say that they're going to say that they feel threatened is because, and I saw his attorney, the lieutenant's attorney was speaking to this. So the sirens went on. He did put on his turn signal, but he wanted to pull over somewhere that was lit. So he drove slowly in front of the officer. And let me tell you, that saved his life. Had he been pulled over on the side of the street, not at a gas station and all that, I don't know that he'd be alive.
Now,
and they're going to say that
the biggest reason that Gutierrez has been fired, everyone thinks it's because they've been spreading the word and this, and I have no doubt that it played a role, but the biggest reason he was fired is because they were actually able to determine that the cops actually knew that he did have a tag on his back window, and they still proceeded to treat him as a hostile customer. And it's like unreal. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you don't want to play the race card and you're trying to find any which way to say that this is not a racially motivated stop. He was in his goddamn fatigues, and they still treated him.
Well, like, and that's something that is what I found to be really kind of profound.
Oh, I guarantee you, those two officers, I guarantee you, they did not serve in the military. Guaranteed.
No, but here's what's so profound about that. It really shows you how the militarization and thugness and how it's all really infiltrated our policing, and how it's come full circle, where the militarization of the police department was just essentially used to subdue somebody in the military who wasn't resisting or doing anything wrong. Like, I think that the fact that he held his stuff together as well as he did, and the guy asked him, he's like, what rank did he ask him if he was? And he's like, I'm a lieutenant. And then he sprayed him again.
Maybe
like, are you? I'm just, these people need to have all of their weapons taken away from them because they just don't know what they're doing. They just don't know what they're doing.
You know, the other thing, Jesus, that you have to remember is that not only would he most likely be dead, but you never would have heard about it.
No. The fact that he kept it together, and he wasn't speeding away. He maintained pace with the officer the whole time with his turn signal on until he came to a lit area. And that is absolutely what saved his life. You're right. We would never even be talking about this. And
what's also interesting when you're watching the video is you've got the typical violent, burly, bald, middle-aged, angry cop who, you know, got a massive chip on his shoulder. And then you got the rookie cop who's maybe on the force for a couple of years. He's standing there. I was more concerned about him because he's the guy who is probably never been in a situation like that. And he had his gun cocked like he was ready to unload. And
I know.
So he was not in a defensive position. He was in an offensive position. Because
yeah, it was crazy.
Front leg in a way to basically say,
get out of the car, like,
I shoot. And
yeah.
And Mallory, what you also have to remember is that there are members of the Latino community who identify as white. And that is something that my understanding is that Officer Gutierrez was one who did.
Oh, Mallory, people love to subjugate their own. You know that. That's unfortunately.
And again, part of it's a class struggle. Part of it's a power trip. It's a lot of different things. But I got to tell you, on top of the fact that he may very well just hate black people, when he saw him in his fatigues and he knew that he was a lieutenant in the Army, he had what that also shows is that Lieutenant Nazario has bigger cojones than he does.
Oh,
And that's something that really drives them nuts.
yeah.
I
thought he handled himself with so much restraint and so
Oh,
much
yeah.
dignity.
Let me tell you, if he
And
wasn't-
I got to tell you, like, he probably could have disarmed that guy and had him in some sort of headlock if he probably wanted to do so. And instead, he just totally, like, just was chill.
Well, I think that, and this is a great example of the again, we both support the Second Amendment, but there's also something to be said for people who like to use guns as a show of strength. And this is a perfect example of an officer who, if he was a plainclothes officer and Lieutenant Nazario was a plainclothes gentleman, if those two men met on the street, there's no way that Gutierrez would ever get out of line with a guy like that, because he would put him down. And that's something that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of people who have weapons who are only able to do what they do because they have that weapon. If Derek Chauvin did not have a gun and George Floyd had the opportunity to defend himself,
you don't think 4-1 is good odds?
Hey, especially when one's got his knee on their neck and you got three officers standing around.
And you're handcuffed.
Well,
and you're handcuffed.
You've got three officers standing in block formation to not allow anybody to stop it. It's like amazing.
Yeah,
and
4-1. It was 4-1.
Yeah.
That whole thing was 4-1.
And the sad thing is that one of the four cops, you could tell, was like, "This is not good. We should not be doing this."
But yet, continue to participate.
And that is the culture of policing that no one wants to talk about. In a normal situation, that one cop, if he didn't have fear of reprisal, whether from his union or because qualified immunity does exist, he very likely would have said, "Get your freaking knee off of his neck," and put him in the back of the squad car. And if he bangs his head against the window 1,000 times, let him break his skull. That's his problem. It's not yours. But
that's why this to me was so much more intentional. And I still, for the life of me, have not heard an explanation as to why, once he was handcuffed and in the backseat of the police car, why they took him out of the police car. Like, this is what I don't understand.
And once again, let's say that George Floyd was having some kind of a manic episode. Let's say that he was high on PCP. If that's the case, there are a lot of ways to diffuse that situation. They did not want to diffuse that situation.
No, which is why I think it was way more intentional than second-degree murder. This is my point. Second-degrry murder wouldn't be that you then first take him out of the car. It's like, that's very intentional. That's very intentional and very forward thinking. I just, the whole thing about it. They didn't get him into that restraint because he was fighting with them and they had to get him down, and then they just stayed there. No, they purposefully put him in that position when he was already in the car. So John wants me to explain qualified immunity for people who don't understand. So qualified immunity is something that allows police officers who violate our, civil rights or get in, criminal trouble and then get sued civilly or, after the fact, that money doesn't come from them. It actually comes from the taxpayers. They are immune themselves as individuals from having to be financially accountable for their actions while serving on the police force. So this is one of the things that arguably would be a very good step in reducing the amount of nonsense. If every single one of those officers knew that this was coming out of their pension, they wouldn't be as likely to do what they do. And that's just the sad reality. But you do have to hit people in their wallets. We were talking about that before. So yeah, it is like unlimited immunity. But so and it isn't just for police officers. Other people get different types of qualified immunity. But when we talk about it with law enforcement, we're talking about that they can't be personally liable for their actions financially. Not in a criminal sense, yes, you could, but financially when you're sued civilly. And that's something that, so for example, the city of Minneapolis reached a settlement with George Floyd's family. I want to say it was $27 million. Was that it?
That is
something like that.
That is
yeah.
it.
$27 million. So that $27 million isn't coming out of the Police Benevolent Association or their pensions or their salaries or, you know, any of that. That's coming out of the tax dollars of the citizens of Minneapolis. And if you were to end qualified immunity, then it would come out of the police officers themselves. They would be personally liable, and you would find them having to like be giving up their homes and whatever if they couldn't afford to pay their bills. So that would be what would happen.
And like I said, you wouldn't even have any instances. The second,
yeah, and Mallory makes a good point, right? And the city and county, right? So the Minneapolis is paying for his defense. Well, I think it's coming from the union. I think that even though he was fired, I believe that the union is still handling all of this. But yeah, the civil fine for sure comes out of the tax dollars from the people of the city.
And what you have to remember is, and I think it's 2 states now, New York and New Mexico, I believe.
Is that I know that there's at least 2, but this is what needs to start happening.
And look, you got to give a lot of credit to Ro Khanna. He's been at the forefront of this issue. He really has been hammering away at this, to his credit. And it really does make a difference when you are willing to put yourself out there, because that is an issue. Let me tell you, even with a lot of the Democrats, this is where, when people say that Ro Khanna doesn't go far enough, he really does make a difference, because very few people ever challenge the police, ever. And the fact that he's willing to go out there and use his platform in front of hundreds of thousands of people and say, yeah, we got to end qualified immunity. This is a very serious problem, and the police are not going to be held accountable at the level that they must be held accountable at until that is removed.
Yeah.
We have, for those of you who do not know Broward County very well, we do have a sheriff who runs this county, and he kind of runs it, like a bull in a china shop. He does things that, there's been a number of instances where, there have been some serious legal issues. There was a massive cover-up in Sunrise when a young boy was killed. And
Damian Martin, and they still haven't released the information, and they're still sitting on it. It's been 2 years now.
And part of the reason why they won't release that information is because they know that there will be massive legal ramifications to that end. So when you have things like qualified immunity in place, we are never going to solve that problem in terms of having, legitimate policing in these communities.
But I will also say that if we get rid of qualified immunity, that would be quite a blow to the police unions. And
100%.
And we need to be chipping away at that power very significantly. And I maintain my idea that we take the money we defund the police, and the money we take from that, we give to the firefighters and the teachers. So that was my theory, especially for people who don't subscribe to MMT and you think it's a budget. Let's take, from pile A and put it in piles B and C.
Well, the first great guest that we had on the podcast in terms of our labor series was Jason Smith, the head of the Firefighters Union. But what's awesome about our Firefighters Union here in Broward is that it's actually a 2-part union where it's firefighters and EMT. Those are also people that need to be getting more support than they are. And again, we are not anti-police. We are pro-police, but you know what? We're pro-police accountability. And that is the way everybody should be. And even when we put out the social post about what happened to Lieutenant Nazario, it was overwhelmingly supported, but there's always going to be a couple of yahoos that will jump on and suggest that, police are doing a great job and you're just defending
And they're entitled to think that. I am not pro-police. I'm pro-firefighter and pro-EMT and pro-teacher. I'm not pro-police. I think that entire field and industry has just been so filled with just nefariousness and rot, and it's just militarized. And no, I don't support that. And however, like I always say, I think of all policing, there's 2 sides of it. There's the patrol side, there's the investigation side. Sure. I do believe in having investigative policing. I do want crime solved. I do want police actually serving the community. But no, I don't like people just out driving around looking to arrest people and fill up bodies for profit.
Well, you have said many a times before that there is, in almost every precinct in the country, massive backlogging in case files that have never been dealt with, sometimes going back decades, I suppose. So that would seem to me, but again, this is one of the reasons why not a lot of people become police officers to do paperwork. That's the truth. And I think if a lot of cops knew that let's put it this way. What would you say percentage-wise paperwork is part of the job for police officers?
Probably most of it, though. Like, really? Do you know that if you were to look up, go ahead, Google it, top 10 most dangerous jobs in this country, police officer isn't in the top 10. And so I just, I'm kind of tired of that their lives are always threatened and their lives are always at risk. And no, that's just not the case. That's not based on actual facts and numbers. That does not support that whatsoever. Iron workers have a much more dangerous job than police officers. Commercial fishermen, loggers. I mean,
loggers. Talk about a dangerous job.
Wire workers like that are the cable guys. I am telling you, police officers is not in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in this country. And yet you would think, and that again is based on a certain amount of propaganda, the strength of the police unions, that their job is the hardest, most dangerous job in the world. No, it isn't. Not if you look at science and numbers. And I'm just, crab fishermen. Here's a good point. Most police that die on the job is in traffic accidents. I believe that, but that could still be seen as a risk of their job. Roofers, there's a good one. Yes. Point being that I'm so tired of that.
I love how everyone in the chat is just like well aware of, being a police officer definitely comes with its risk, but there's a lot of other jobs that are equally, if not more riskier. So
way more. And honestly, I think that in many cases, the firefighters have a much more dangerous job in terms of even when their life is not at risk in the moment, the chemicals and the fumes and the stuff that they inhale, which makes them sicker, younger, is way worse. And they don't have the same union power that the police do.
No. And and listen, we love Jon Stewart and the work that he has done for the 9/11 firefighters is amazing. But the truth is, it's the firefighters that are having that problem. The police are not.
No,
and that just goes to show you,
and not just from 9/11, from everything.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. But it is a much more riskier job, even if the risks are not as consistent. But then again, like I said, it's a job, and if you think about it in a lot of ways, if we're being honest, being a police officer has aching ties to the military-industrial complex. Because we are living in a police state, and we are living in a time where, when we were canvassing during the campaign, and I remember we were canvassing, I want to say this was in, I think it might have been Sunrise, actually. And we were canvassing in Sunrise, and we were noticing that the police cars were from Hallandale.
Oh yeah, every neighborhood is like that, or Miami Lakes, or wherever.
People are not being policed by people that they know, because if you know certain people, that changes the whole dynamic of how you would look at somebody. If you're approaching a car that's been speeding or going erratic, but it happens to be in the same area that you live in, odds are, if you're a police officer, you're going to know who that person is. So you're not going to approach their car with this inherent fear that, oh my God, could this person have a weapon? No, likelihood is they're out of their mind right now, and I got to calm them down. But if you are a police officer who works in Miami, but you live 40 minutes, 45 minutes north, what do you think is likely to happen? Probably not much good. And that's a very big problem. So community policing is also an issue that doesn't get addressed enough. You should be.
And I feel like this is very intentional. I want to say it's intentional. I don't think it's a matter of just coincidence or happenstance that where people can and cannot get jobs. I think it's intentional. I think it is designed to create a much more of a barrier between law enforcement and people, despite their photo ops and talking points to the contrary. I think that it facilitates more divisiveness. I think that it is very intentional. And because you can make a concerted effort to have law enforcement serve their communities. This is not something that can't be done. Therefore, to me, it's intentional. And I don't think that they all talk about it. They all say things like, yeah, we need to get community policing. And, they say all these catchphrases, but they're not going to actually do anything about it. And so, especially not with this sheriff, especially not here with this sheriff. So, you know, and I don't see anything good happening from that.
I think it's interesting how it is in our own backyard. And look, you know, Jen is very friendly. I wouldn't say very friendly, but definitely friendly with our former sheriff. And, you know, he wasn't without, obviously, his flaws. And unfortunately, he did take the brunt of responsibility for what happened in Parkland. Right or wrong, anyone could debate that. But he was not somebody who had a reputation for enforcing law in a way that made people afraid to be in their communities. And unfortunately, the sheriff that we have now is the type of sheriff that would very likely, I hate to say this, but is very likely to employ the type of police officers that have been caught up in the certain instances that have happened in Minneapolis, that have happened in Virginia. And the reason why your sheriff is such an important job is because it is somewhat of a hierarchical approach. If the person at the top treats law enforcement as a cowboy type situation, well, how do you think his subordinates are going to conduct themselves?
Well, yeah, and for people who don't realize, our sheriff is basically the poster child for shoot first and ask questions later. Like if you were to picture somebody with their story, their history, their background, that is what you would think of. I'm sorry, but it is. So, you know, and there's also a myriad of investigations going on against that person right now as well. And
of course, these types of things happen, whether anybody wants to talk about it, but there's a lot of politics that go into this type of thing. You know, politics is a very big part of why certain sheriffs get elected, certain sheriffs don't, why certain ones get pushed aside, why certain ones stay for a long, long time. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody knows that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in very nefarious activities, and a lot of very wealthy and powerful people on Palm Beach were involved with that for many, many years. Well, guess what? The sheriff of Palm Beach County, who has overseen that for decades now, he's still the sheriff. That's not a mistake. Not even.
It's an old boys club, and we're not in it.
Listen, George Carlin. If only, you know, George died at 71. I mean, look, he was not a baby, but man, if only he could have hung around for another 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know that he would. I don't know what he would. His head would have exploded with the Trump stuff, probably. But
I don't think that is what he would have actually read that situation very well. I think his head would have exploded knowing that somebody like Bernie Sanders came along, was willing to really challenge the machine, especially in 2016, and seeing what they were willing to do to him, to railroad him, to maintain the power vacuum. And that's, again, he would have been.
Okay, so John, are you suggesting that our friend Epstein was Arkancided, as I like to call it?
I cannot comment on that. I don't know anything about what
I think he was Arkancided.
But isn't it amazing how I visited that island quite a few times, and yet somehow I'm still considered, you know, greatest thing since sliced bread in the Democratic establishment? But don't tell anybody about that.
Check this out. So, and okay, but this was Bernie wasn't on the table at this point. It was that was the option. So, I mean, and nobody really knew who Barack Obama was. So, in all fairness, it wasn't like he was presented with a populist option.
That's very fair. And of course,
I'm just saying we don't know.
Yeah, we don't want to assume anything. And look, you know what? You know who else supported Hillary Clinton in 2008? Nina Turner. So
again, there wasn't a populist option. We weren't talking about Medicare for all.
You know, honestly, if you go back and you look at Hillary in 2008, I mean, she was actually advocating for universal health care, at least.
She's the one who wrote the original universal health care plan that the Republicans basically destroyed and laughed her out of the chambers when she wrote that.
You know what? She wanted to get the power of it. She wanted the power. She wanted to become, you know, she had to become a United States senator, and decided to take all that pharma and private insurance money. And once you do that, you want to become a United States senator in the state of New York. Well,
and then you get Arkancided.
Or you become Chuck Schumer. And so those are the people who run the game. And because they run the game, this is what we have to deal with. It's not fair and it's not fun, but I just think more and more people are learning every day just how much of a house of cards our country really is.
Yeah,
Are there any-
you know what, Mallory, I feel even dumber because I wasn't even really, I went back and forth between both Hillary and Obama in '08, just trying to figure out strategically who I thought would have a better chance. Like I really went with either of those people, which
well,
I
you
both
always
embarrassed for both of those choices.
well you always maintain that the prospect of somebody like Sarah Palin getting that close to
Oh,
that kind of power would have been so dangerous on so many levels, because you want to talk about somebody who never would have been the president, who would have basically had other people running the country. That person never would have been actually making any
I
type
don't
of
know that I
decision.
feel any better about it being Kamala, to tell you the truth.
No, I don't either. But then again, that's a whole other can of worms. I understand the desire to have a Madam President, and I have no issue with that.
I don't feel like that. Okay, first of all, I feel like, first of all, if more women were in charge in executive positions, that things actually would be infinitely better just across the board. And I'm not saying that in a just we're better way, but just different people have different skills. And I do think we'd have less wars. I do. I also think we time manage infinitely better, and we also multitask infinitely better. So I do think it would be better. That being said, I do not like the idea of supporting someone who is wrong on everything I believe in and agree with just because they're a female or a person of color. That to me is not good. Like, that's racist in its own way.
Yeah, and again,
it's using race as a base.
Well, but again, I also think a lot of the things with Hillary changed significantly, because I think initially a lot of people really were gung ho about her, and then Obama came along and really, it was kind of like, being left at the altar type of situation. She thought she had done everything necessary to put herself in that position.
It was actually quite beautiful. Not as beautiful as, this last time.
No, but what you also have to remember, and this is what doesn't get talked about enough, is that everyone is aware of the shenanigans that Hillary pulled in 15 and 16, and even post the election. But what a lot of people don't know is that what she and Wasserman Schultz and a lot of them were up to is, Bernie and Hillary really had a very competitive primary. And after he won the Michigan primary, he was in it, and he was at least in it until New York, and he continued to win states after the fact. He wanted to run to California, and I totally understand that. But in 2008, when Obama won Iowa and South Carolina, it was pretty clear that he was going to run away with it based on the numbers, because he crushed her she barely won New Hampshire. She placed third in Iowa, and then he ran away with it in South Carolina. And she held on not only till the end when it was clear that she had no chance, but she refused to let it go without certain concessions, to the extent that she was willing to have her people throw their weight to John McCain. And remember the Democrats for McCain? That was a bunch of Hillary delegates.
He was looking solid until he picked Sarah Palin, that's for sure. That was the downfall right there. That was
maybe Obama was going to be a flash in the pan if he didn't pick Biden to be his VP. I mean, look, there's a lot of what ifs that ultimately end up coming down.
I'm pretty sure Sarah Palin can be seen as a liability. I'm pretty sure we know that.
Maybe so, but I still thought that Obama was going to win in 2008, no matter what. For you had the housing bubble. You had the financial crisis. Was still in the wars. Obama, unlike Hillary,
look at how he handled that.
Yeah, sure. Well, unlike Hillary, Obama did say we're going to get out of Iraq and we're going to get out of Afghanistan. And
yet, did that happen?
No, it didn't happen, but he did say it. And again, there were a lot of things that Trump said didn't happen, but he said it and people liked it. And I have no doubt that but again, people are getting tired of being promised stuff and nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens.
Yeah. And everything is, and Anthony, again, with a great point. Ron Paul was running an anti-war message in the GOP in 2007, 2008. And at that time, that was a no-no. That was not allowed. And
no, that was around the same time they were squashing it in all the media sources, too. That's when everybody was getting fired for any sort of anti-war sentiment. They squashed that like a bug.
I remember, as those of you who know me, I'm a big sports guy, and I can still remember back in 2003, I was a big fan of Steve Nash, who was a point guard in the NBA, very successful player for many years, but he's a proud Canadian. And when we were talking about going into Iraq in the spring of 2003, he started bringing the Canadian flag with him to basketball games and talking about what a joke it is that we're trying to go to war over nothing in the Middle East. And he caught a lot of hell for that. I'll never forget, but I always respected the hell out of him for doing it. And you could probably find some old articles from this 18 years, man, time flies. But just knowing that he was willing to have that type of courage, that he was willing to put himself out there and say, yeah, this is ridiculous. There's no reason for us to attack Iraq. They didn't do anything. And of course, everyone's like, oh, well, they're a threat, this and that. No. Let me know when a cruise missile, again, it's like North Korea. North Korea is testing cruise missiles in the Pacific, but let me know when they're pointing one at the United States. Let me know when that day comes, because the second that day comes, they'll be given the ultimatum of ultimatums and they'll stop. And that's it. So everyone who thinks that anyone is actually going to hurt us, the only country that could really hurt us is China. And that's
financially for sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Any day now when they want to. But so listen, since are we having is our friend coming over?
We are going to have a special guest.
Okay, so but before we do that, okay.
Okay, so unfortunately, guys, I was supposed to be traveling this evening and I made a boo-boo.
We already went through all this in the beginning.
Well, there's a lot more people watching, so I want to make sure that those who are here just know the end of the story.
So our guest had to, we ended up, the truth is we shouldn't have booked a guest for tonight, knowing you were supposed to be traveling, whatever. So we had a timing thing. And so our planned guest for tonight is not coming on, but we're having a special guest who is very special. I mean, can I say? It's not a secret, right?
I don't think it's a secret anymore because it looks like we are. John, are we confirmed? Just want to make sure we got the email and responded back.
So anyway, so then let's, before our special guest comes on, let's do our Florida Bites and is full of reptiles.
Yes, there is one story that we do have to cover, and this is my story, of course. So this is the one that I think is very important. So for those
seriously, look at that. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's Matt Gaetz wants to date your child.
That was a billboard. That's a photo of a billboard. I didn't make that.
Are you sure you didn't make that?
No, that's
Maybe
a
you were the
photo.
one responsible?
No, I would have done it better. You could see the photo edges. That was a photo somewhere up in like northern Florida.
Here's the thing. And this is what, and this is, I'm going to address this in a couple of ways. I think it's very important that people understand this. Number one, Matt Gaetz is going down. He's not going to survive this. It's just a question of what his exit looks like.
It looks like this, man. If he's lucky, something in the Everglades with the gators.
Hey, you know what? Here in Florida,
that's how you get rid of a body, people. You take it into the Everglades.
Your good friend up in Floribama in that district, he probably knows a thing or two about body dismemberment.
I'm just saying, you want to get rid of a body, the Everglades, man.
Well, yeah, but there's plenty of swamps in the Florida Panhandle, so I don't think that there's.
Point being, he's looking like a tasty meal.
He is, and unfortunately, he has not made a lot of friends in DC. He's made a lot of enemies. A lot of people do not like his, his shtick, if you will. He's another child of privilege. The only reason he's sitting in a congressional seat is because of his father. His father basically bequeathed that seat to him. Gaetz is, just another horrific product of nepotism in the worst way possible. And you could tell he's a total bro. He's like he's totally vapid. He's got no real convictions. A lot of the things that he does is to be contrarian. Does he have some good takes here and there? Yeah, he's not without certain, things that he does. He is
apparently he dates children.
Yeah, he apparently dates children.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
It's full stop. It's a deal breaker. Sorry. I don't care if he is having swinger parties and is doing all sorts of meth and hanging out with hookers. And I don't care what he does. If everybody is a consenting adult, then he should have at it.
Yeah.
But from my understanding is he's dating children, and that's a problem.
Well, if you're taking any, again, the mistake he made, honestly, he might have saved himself only losing his seat for being caught having relations with a 17-year-old. But the fact that he took her across state lines That is
shows intention.
Oh, yes. It's not just that. It's the fact that when it comes to trafficking, even if he was not intentionally trafficking this girl, it is very, very specific.
Yeah. And the thing the thing is it really shows you like the calculation. So for example, as a law person, I understand that with statutory rape, there is no consent. By de facto, there's no consent. So even if it's a 17-year-old that's seemingly consenting, like not being forced, that still doesn't qualify as consent. And so there have been cases that I've heard of, statutory rape cases, where girls use fake IDs. Girls are in places that you would assume they were of age, and they turn out to not be. Those men are still on the hook for statutory rape, as they should be. It's statutory rape.
Correct.
But I feel differently about it from a moral perspective than I do when someone knowingly is doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's just gross.
He, like I said, there's nothing redeemable about him. He's very, like I said, he's vapid, he's aloof, and he's a jerk. And you know,
I think Mallory has a good take.
You know, he looks just like Butthead. I mean, I
always think of Trump's sons as Beavis and Butthead, though, but I could see the resemblance.
You know, totally. I mean, he really, especially when he's had his hair done up like Butthead. I mean, it's just crazy.
He's just, you know what? He's a douche. But I would like to point out to people while we're on this, before I get rid of the graphic. So anyone now who comes on as a Patreon and they get the gift, if you come on as a $5, $10 Patreon, everybody now is getting the Florida Bites and it's full of reptile sticker. And it looks just like that with the little postie on it and everything. It's really cute.
But here's the other component of this story that I want to talk about, which I think is very key. So let's just assume that Gaetz goes down. Let's assume he goes down, and I think he will. There's going to be a special election. And for anyone who thinks that a Democrat is going to get into that district, save your money, save your resources, save it all now, because it ain't happening.
They're not going to listen to you. They never listen.
But what I would suggest is that for anybody who actually thinks that there's a...
I specifically said of age hookers. I specifically said consenting adults. I have no problem with sex workers, but no, I did say meth and hookers, but not underage hookers. Sorry. Don't hang me out as that. Gotta own it.
If you saw the interview with Hunter, it was pretty bad. But what I am suggesting to anyone who is listening, you know, we don't have to just change the Democratic Party. We have to change the Republican Party as well. And so if somebody who is in the Florida Panhandle, who does have conservative values, but actually believes in primary issues that will help the collective, you know.
Yes, they probably voted for the $15 minimum wage.
You know, conservatism is, it covers a lot of things, but it's not just fiscal responsibility. Conservatism means the environment. The greatest conservative we ever had was Teddy Roosevelt. And he was all about
Teddy,
the importance of those types of things. So if you support civil liberties as a true conservative, there are a lot of things that we can find common ground on. But the biggest issue here is whether or not somebody would run in an open race, mind you, with no corporate special interest money, because that's really the ticket. More than anything else, we need to have representation across every political spectrum, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. If we had the opportunity to sit at a table as two non-corporate representatives, let's say you were in Congress as a progressive on the left, and then there was somebody in District 1 who was conservative on the right, but didn't take any corporate money. I'd like to think that you could sit at a table with that person and probably come to an agreement on certain primary issues. Whereas if that person was swimming in corporate money, then you couldn't even have a conversation with them because it's not worth it. It's just lip service, because ultimately they're answering to a higher authority. And that's what has to change. So if there is going to be a primary, and Lord knows if there is one, it's not going to be one guy. The one thing you can give the Republicans credit for, they usually have a pretty fair primary process. They're not clearing the field for one person to take over.
Look, they don't use super delegates. So,
No.
They're inherently more democratic.
So they will have a primary. And as I like to tell people, when everyone says that the GOP falls in line, yes and no. When it's amongst their own, no. When it's amongst Democrats in a general election, every time. If there's one thing,
I agree. He's just going to be replaced by another clown. That's true. It's not going to matter. That's the thing.
That may be true, but it may not be true. So you won't know until somebody actually runs, because remember, a lot of what the Trump message is for a lot of those people is a economic populist message.
But of course, he didn't do those things.
No, absolutely not. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of BS. Like Gaetz was claiming that he was a non-corporate representative. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
And
what you vote? I mean, give me a break. To
me, he's like the Republican Patrick Murphy.
I met Patrick Murphy, and he was nice, but he didn't have anything to say.
It has to do with nice. It has to do with money and corporate nepotism and disgustingness, and their
100%.
fathers setting them up.
Patrick Murphy, listen, he is a complete product of his father's success. And
that is my point.
And a lot of people like to talk about, listen, I would have her on the podcast, but, Lauren Book is is our state senator. And she is only in the Senate because her father is one of the most powerful lobbyists this country's ever seen, on top of the fact that he's a crook. So when you think about it, I don't watch Bill Maher anymore, but he did have a really great line a number of years ago, which is, behind every great fortune is a great crime.
Oh.
And in many cases, that is true. Not every case, but you know what? Probably more than not. I hate to say that, but probably more than not. So if and when Gaetz steps aside, and I don't know what my guess is at this point, he's just trying to negotiate his terms. I think that that's what he's doing. He's just trying to make sure that when he goes away, but he's not going to federal prison. That's basically.
No, he will go. He'll go to Club Fed. Are you kidding me? He'll go like where Martha Stewart went.
For anybody who's wondering why this thing is taking so long, like I said, this is how this stuff gets handled behind the scenes. And he's got the best lawyers money can buy. He doesn't want to walk away, but I think if he knows that he is going down and he could go to federal prison, then he will have no choice. Because that's basically what the ultimatum would be. Because a guy like Gaetz would drag this out. You could tell that he has no intention of going quietly. But if they basically come to an agreement that he's not going to face federal charges, then he'll step down. So it's really just a matter of negotiating those terms. And once those terms are set in place, then it's going to happen. Now, when it's going to happen, not really sure. But for anybody who is in, Panama City, Destin, any of those places that are covering the first district.
In Floribama. If you live in Floribama.
I still think we should nominate Bo. That's who I'm nominating.
He is not getting involved in this, and he's also not a Republican. He's not a Democrat, and he's not a Republican, and he doesn't want to be.
The beautiful thing about him is that he could run as a Republican.
Yes, but he wouldn't, because he won't affiliate with them, because he has, morals and integrity, unlike the rest of us who want to still swill around political partisan hackery.
Fair as it may be, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm simply saying that we're at a point where there is going to be some kind of an opening. And whoever is going to decide to get into that race, because there will be a lot of people that will run in that race. They will. There is no circumstance here. Are there going to be kingmakers as there normally would be an entrenched? It's not even a gerrymandered district. It just happens to be a very red district. It's actually probably the most fairly divided district in the whole state.
It's literally just a square. It just is, right. It's not gerrymandered.
And it's county lined. Yeah,
it isn't gerrymandered. It's just really red. So it 100%. Is what it is.
So whoever is going to emerge, I would highly recommend trying to find somebody who's willing to run on the GOP ticket. And you can run on GOP principles. There's nothing wrong with that, because the basic principles of the GOP is actually not as nefarious as people think. There's a big difference between being somebody who votes for conservative values and somebody who represents you in a nefarious, corrupt way. Huge difference. So if you actually had a representative who was representing that district, but was actually representing the people and not representing corporate special interests, there's no telling what that might be able to turn into. So
right, but chances are it's going to be like another Trumper, douchey kind of guy.
It may very well be that. And again, I'm not discounting
or a woman like what's her face, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That could be true too. But again, we're not talking about somebody who's running with no corporate special interest money. You need to find somebody who's willing to do that.
Nobody's willing to do that. And certainly, and I agree with Mallory. She's like, what she says, like, she wants here.
I will have a brain bleed the day that I see a Republican running without taking corporate money. You know what?
Oh, and by the way, shout out to Mallory for getting sworn into the Florida bar. Very proud of you.
Congratulations,
yes, long time coming. So yeah, shout out to Mallory for that.
So I believe our friend will be coming on in a moment's time. We'll see.
Is he on like some sort of Caribbean time?
No, he's just having dinner. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, so
we'll be hopping on.
But he's coming, is what you're saying? He's going to save the day.
That's my understanding. At 9:30, save the day. I actually think we've had a pretty good show, all things considered.
Well, yes, but our guessing. Oh, and by the way, do we have anything scheduled for Thursday? Not yet,
not
right?
At the moment, no. So now we really need to be forging ahead. That to me is important. But John and I will go over that after the show. I do have an idea of a person that I would really like to see come on. I think that we.
Well, I also reached out to a new person that's willing to come on, but it won't be like sexy for you. So.
Okay, well then maybe that person could come on for.
Oh, I don't think, and no, he can't do this week. But I did reach out to someone who I saw talking about. This is someone who is basically an expert on the environmental impact of our military-industrial complex.
Oh, it's the biggest impediment to any type of environmental policy.
And so this is someone who is basically, that's their bag. He's a science person, and I saw him on something, and so I reached out. I do that because I'm a dork.
Yes, you are.
And so he absolutely said he would. Actually, I saw him on, I want to say I saw him on like NPR or something like that. And he's not from here, but he lives in California now. He's from, I want to say Brussels or Germany. I got to look. Somewhere in Europe, somewhere not here. And now he lives in California, and this is his expertise. So I thought that would be a good expert.
I would certainly like to know why he felt the need to move to the United States.
Well, maybe because this is where it's most needed because we have the biggest issues.
I think everyone just believes that if the U.S. got its act together, that the rest of the world will follow suit. And maybe
Nick Buxton. His name is Nick Buxton.
Nick Buxton.
And I saw him on Activism Munich because I subscribe to Activism Munich, which is a YouTube channel. For people who want actual world news, you cannot seek it from American news. If you want world news, you have to seek it elsewhere. American news barely gives you accurate American news. So I get a lot of European news. I get from Activism Munich or RT or, whatever. But anyway, so yeah, I saw him in that and I reached out. So his name is Nick Buxton, and I will forward that to you, John, because he can set up next week or the week after.
All right. So it looks like our friend is not going to be able to make it on this evening. So
we're just getting jerked around left and right.
Yeah, we are.
And yet I still love you, Elijah Manley.
Yeah.
You know I do. I always love me some Elijah Manley. And he knows, like, he could do no wrong. And he's got that baby face with those, like, doe eyes. And it's like, it's hard. I don't even know how anybody could ever even stay angry with him. Like he's just, and yet he's so fierce. He's really a good combination of baby face and fierce.
Well, he's determined to serve, and that is a very noble thing because again, if he was determined to serve for his own interests, then he would take corporate money to make sure he does get in. But he's not.
And he absolutely wants a career in public service.
Sure.
Like he's the kind of person that I could see being like a Bernie Sanders.
Absolutely.
Like be a lifelong public servant.
I have no problem with anybody who wants to go into this with the right intentions and does not take what is impeding progress. If you're willing to serve the people, there's no reason that you can't do this for a career because again, you are essentially at the whim of the people that you represent. If you don't represent them, then you can't stay in power. If you take the corporate route, then corporate power will always seize to win over the people, unless we end up getting our act together, which Lord knows we haven't.
And I will say this is the debate about that I have with progressives about like my support of term limits. Because yeah, if you had term limits, you wouldn't have somebody like Bernie Sanders or a potential Elijah Manley, but that is unfortunately the exception, not the rule in politics. I think more people sit way beyond their expiration date than people that are truly still serving. And so I think that barring a change in our electoral politics and the system that we use, which I think is highly suspect, that term limits is the solution until we have actual fair elections or ranked choice voting or a variety of things that would ensure to me that our representatives are actually serving the people. So that's the problem. This is something I wanted to tell you, and I just had this idea this morning, and I spoke with Mo about it. So you know how my friend Mona Lisa Weber, who is an amazing community activist and always working to help the people in the community, one of the things that I know she used to do was she collects like professional clothing, lightly worn professional clothing, to give to not just people for working, but even people for court dates and stuff like that. Just as like a resource for people in the community that can't afford professional wardrobe. And so I very recently, within the past few days, please pay attention, people, because if you are this person, I'm going to need you to reach out to me, because this is where like cannabis brain becomes complicated. Someone within the past few days mentioned to me that they own a storage facility place, a company, you know, not a unit, but they own a place. If you are that person, please reach out to me. So my idea is to get somebody to donate or a donation of storage place and turn it into a community closet. And basically, because I have so much stuff, Mo has so much stuff, I know so many people do, and have our own community closet for people.
Yes.
And then you would have it where it was open, you know, you would have several times a week where it's open. You're obviously not going to be manning a store 24/7. But so anyway, if you are the person with the storage units, please hit me up. Otherwise, hopefully it'll come to me. But I think that this is something that could easily be done. There has got to be people that have available storage that would be willing to donate it or give it at a discounted cost. It just needs to be climate controlled. Kind of like where we keep the comics.
Yes.
So it's not like brutally, excruciatingly hot, but it doesn't need to be like an AC or anything. It just needs to be. So anyway, that's my thought. Community closet. That's something on the radar. And we are starting to put together bags for the homeless. I don't like the idea of calling them blessing bags. I don't know. I need to come up with a name. Mona Lisa has a ton of bags that she has that she's going to donate. Our volunteer coordinators helping do that. So we will be putting together bags for the homeless. And then I'm trying to think what else. We have a mobile school pantry distribution on Friday. Now, if you're able to help.
And I would highly recommend, if you can make it to the distribution on Friday, we are going to be doing some B-roll camera footage for our upcoming video.
So we could use help, and people wearing Jen shirts would be Jen Core shirts, 100%. Plus you get the shirt. Speaking of which, do you have more shirts at home, or what was in your car was everything?
Pretty sure everything I've got is in the car.
Okay, so all we have left is like a few larges.
Okay. Well,
so we're gonna, yeah. But the point is, if you guys want to come out, mobile school pantry distribution is Friday 3 to 6, West Hollywood Elementary. If you are not available in the afternoon, but you can help in the morning, this is on their website. John, can you put that in there? The mobile school pantry volunteer link. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to. I'd like be doing 3 things at once, but they also need help in the morning from 11 to 2 at the warehouse where they do the packing, and then we do the distribution portion is in the afternoon at West Hollywood Elementary. We'd love to see you guys out there.
You know, hopefully Kira can assist with that.
Anyone jump on. I mean, it's. I just know where the distribution is because that's my plan to go there, and
also,
it's hard enough.
Also, we've expanded our team a little bit. We're getting a little bit more fine-tuned, I guess you could say.
We're getting there. We're almost good with our website, yes?
Mm-hmm. Pretty close.
Okay.
You've got, hey, look who jumped in, Jen.
Oh, look who it is. It's my friend Case Study QB.
So what I would say...
won't out you. I won't out your name.
No. Let's keep him.
He's like anonymous.
He's anonymous. He's got to have that mask. You got to wear
kind of like anonymous. Yeah, he kind of is. Because when I met him, I said, "How come you don't show your face?" And he can't because he works for the man.
Oh, well.
His real job, his day job, is working for the man. Yeah, see, he knows. But that's okay. That's okay. You know, where he's on the right side.
Your secret safe with us, Superman.
All right, guys. So listen, if you have any interest, go on to mobileschoolpantry.org, get involved, go to their volunteer, sign up to help with a shift. If for whatever reason it says it's full, but you want to come hang out on Friday anyway, come out to West Hollywood Elementary. We can always use more hands. And plus we're filming, so it'll be fun. What else do we have going on?
I think that's it for now. Just got to find the right guest for Thursday, and we hope all
Any
you guys are doing
suggestions are
great.
welcome.
Yes. Last thing I'll leave you guys with, it turns out that Matt Gaetz is now directly tied to the fraudulent candidate in the state Senate race in South Florida.
Are you remotely surprised by that?
No, not at all. Why would I be? And now and part of the reason why I think Gaetz has to go is because he's very close with DeSantis, and there's only so much that Ron is going to put up with before, if it's ultimately affecting him politically, especially in his re-election year coming up. Yeah, that's not going to work. So, hey, see you, bro.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, so Case Study QB is a show on YouTube as well. And it's really focused on different ideas and strategies to push progressive ideas forward. It's really smart. He's got great guests. You'll get to see who he actually is. And only if you're a guest. I got to see him. But anyway, so he has a very good idea that John's referencing called the Progressive Gauntlet. And it's essentially this idea, you know how, Peter, we had with Brand New Congress, the 21st Century Bill of Rights?
Right.
So it's kind of like we want all these things. So it's like a list for candidates to sort of say what they stand for. This is more like a list of subject matter and topics that candidates need to address one way or the other. So we need to know your position on this, and this. So it isn't that you have to agree to Medicare for all and you have to agree. You have to say what your position is on it. You have to answer the issues. And I think it's a really good idea. And again, different districts.
People's Gauntlet.
Yeah. Different districts.
And the other thing that I think also has to be brought up, Ron Placone, friend of the show, brought this up the other day. Very important. There needs to be a Bill of Rights, a independent media Bill of Rights, because big tech censorship is absolutely destroying us. We know what they're doing. Friend of the show again, Jordan Chariton and Status Quo have been just completely decimated in every way, shape, or form, all because they are telling the truth. And we all know that if you tell the truth, it's sort of considered a courageous act. I mean, we literally are living in an Orwellian existence right now. I know everyone thinks, how could that possibly be? I'm like, no, it's real. It's definitely happening. And, we have a police state we're trying to deal with right now. So when I tell people, you really got to kind of just put your differences aside and try to find ways to, check your egos at the door, because we don't have time. We're really in a very, very precarious situation in terms of where our country's going. And,
I did see the guy that got visited by Capitol Hill police for tweeting about AOC. He was the most non-threatening person I could think of, maybe outside of like Medea Benjamin being accused.
Yeah, but he's also part of that show that Rania Khalek was a part of, Left Bitches. And so the reality is,
what is wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. What they're basically showing you is that everyone's being watched. Everyone knows what everybody's saying. And any cop can show up at your door anytime to basically let you know that, this is Big Brother and this is real.
Hell, if you're Breonna Taylor, they could just come in and shoot you.
That's true too. And if he was black, who knows what would have happened to him?
Well, again, like I tell anybody when I talk about the Chauvin trial, it's like, please show me the video of the black police officer kneeling on the white guy's neck for 9 minutes and 26 seconds. I want to see that video.
It doesn't exist because it didn't happen.
Yes, that's the point.
With that said, we really, we ended up having a really solid show, all things considered.
I'm glad you're so pleased with yourself. But meanwhile, we really need to come up with something for Thursday, people. People, what should we do? Let's see if we can get Andrew to come on. Maybe he'll pop on.
Well, you have a very important phone conversation tomorrow, so we'll see where that goes.
What time is that, and why is it not on my calendar?
He didn't give a specific time, but just text him and let him know that,
I don't know who he is and who you're talking about, so.
Andrew's scheduling.
Yeah, well, I don't
I'll
have
send
that
that
info.
again, so we'll get that going.
All right.
With that
But
said,
anyway, we'll come up with something really good for Thursday. I mean, this was really more of a scheduling situation based
yeah,
on Peter's travel skills.
yeah, it's all my fault. So anyway, I
It's
hope
not
you
about
guys
fault.
enjoyed the show. We always appreciate you guys coming out. Keep spreading the word, and remember, we're in this together.
We're in this together. You're so, oh my God. Now you're doing like Iron Maiden hands. It's
Yeah,
like, peace out.
that's right, baby.
No, I don't.
You can do whatever I want. You're not
Sure.
the boss of me.
I am the boss of you. So
guess,
you're
yeah,
coming home tomorrow on the flight that was supposed to be today.
Correct.
And that was supposed to get in at like 7:22, but then was delayed.
Well, tomorrow it won't be a problem because the weather's going to be great. So, knock on wood.
So yay you.
7:22.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and you tell me a gate and a number and not an airline. Like, have you not seen how Fort Lauderdale set up? Like, if you don't know what airline, how do you know what terminal?
Airline is JetBlue.
I know what it is. I figured it out myself. I had to go search.
Gaetz. Oh, Gaetz. There you go. YMCA. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Keep spreading the word. We'll see you all on Thursday.
Peace out.